Welcome back, boys, to another build video, and today we're covering the best build, my most favorited build in the entire game, and that is Whirlwind, which got a very juicy buff in the mid-season update, and it is now absolutely fucking slapping. So we're going to cover the skills, the gear, and the Paragon in some depth, hopefully not just giving you sort of where to put all the points in, but also gaining a little understanding of how the build actually works. If you like the build or you like the way that I present it, don't forget to consider giving the video a like or subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. Kicking us off, we have the skill tree. Now we have 2 points in Deflay because we have to have some points somewhere to unlock the next node, and then we have Whirlwind, obviously. So with Whirlwind, you can see that I actually have 8 ranks contributed by items. You'll only normally have 1 point in here, or you're only going to allocate 1 point in here because it's a utility spell in this build. Technically, it's just being used to spawn dust devils. We're not focusing on this itself doing any damage. We do have Furious Whirlwind because a lot of the damage from this build is going to be coming from bleeding, and this gives us access to a reliable bleed. So definitely a bit weird, but that's what we're doing. I have 3 points into pressure point because I didn't roll chance to make enemies vulnerable on my gear. You won't see this in the planner. You'll only have 1 point in here, so don't worry too much about that discrepancy. Down here, then, we have the damage reduction passives, martial figure, and imposing presence, like with basically every build ever. And then we have tactical rallying cry. So what this gives us is the big, fat, juicy boost to resource, and then also gives us unstoppable as well. So, you know, you guys probably know this one already. We have then tactical iron skin. Iron skin, giga OP, massively valuable. We get a huge barrier from it. It heals us to full, and with the iron warrior aspect, it gives us the most insane amount of damage reduction. Very powerful indeed. Then over here, we have Tactical Challenging Shout. This is going to give us a big boost to damage reduction, life, and also some fury per second. And the reason we're really drilling the fury per second, or the fury gain through this build, is because we have the devilish aspect, which will spawn dust devils every time we generate 100 fury. So that's why we're going super duper hard on it. Whirlwind itself basically spends no fury in this build. And then moving over here, we have Warcry, which serves first as a pretty juicy source of damage as well as a source of berserking. We then, of course, have Booming Voice for the shout skill duration. And then we have Raid Leader. It's very important we get this heal here because we want to make sure that our life is topped up at all times so that our Arterial's Might is casting its little artillery thingy-mabob. We then have Aggressive Resistance for damage reduction and Prolific Fury for more resource regen. Like I said, we're going super duper hard on Fury regen. Got Pit Fighter for damage reduction and damage. Usually you would have 3 points in here, but some of those points I have in pressure point a little further up the tree are causing a problem here. But yeah, this is really good for getting through the toughest part of a pit boss fight. Then we have Hamstring, just so that we can get into Cut to the Bone to give us that nice juicy damage to bleeding on vulnerable enemies, which is a big reason of why it's really important to have pressure point or to have chance to make enemies vulnerable on your ring, because you need them to be vulnerable to take advantage of this, and also a lot of other damage boosts throughout the build. 1 point of Thick Skin so that we can get into counter offensive. Now, because this build plays from behind Iron Skin, getting fortified isn't super duper important, but you can swap one thing in the build if you find that you are taking too much damage. Now, swapping from Tactical Rallying Cry to Strategic Rallying Cry. That will solve that problem for you. Now, this is a two-handed build, so we are going to be using heavy-handed for that extra crit multiplier. We've got Wrath of the Berserker fully juiced out, and because this is a bleed build, we are using Gushing Wounds. And that is, well, I mean, it's really powerful this season. This has been a bit of a sleeper for the first half of the season, but, you know, once Flay came out and the Bleed Bash build, I mean, it really did come into a life of its own. Now, as for the weapon setup, we'll quickly go over this. To bring this window up in game, you press S. For your Whirlwind, you want to be using your slashing weapon, and then other than that, we are not using any other attacks. But for your passives, you want to be using the two-handed axe technique, which is going to increase the damage that we do to vulnerable enemies. And you can bring this window up by pressing Shift-C. Now, moving on to the gear, and holy shit, am I loving the cosmetics this season. So boys, please make sure you like and subscribe so I can keep my house. Anyways, this is obviously the Uber version of the build. I will include a non-Uber variant of it. Just bear in mind it is obviously weaker. Anyways, we have the Harlequin crest here. Best, like, uber unique in the entire game. Has lots of very valuable stuff for us, namely the resource regen, the cooldown reduction, of course, the damage reduction itself. Now, I would say that as far as the masterworking priority goes, you want to try and get it all on cooldown reduction. Resource generation is a pretty good second alternative. That's why I didn't re-roll it, but cooldown reduction is definitely your best friend here. Then we have the Tyrael's Might, which is doing basically all of the heavy lifting when it comes to our elemental resistances. And then as far as masterworking goes for this one, it really needs to all be on the maximum resistance to all elements. I just didn't get it, and I am poor as fuck. So I have not bothered re-rolling it. It is what it is, boys, but do what the planner says. Don't do as I do, as they say. Now, moving on to gloves, and this will become a bit of a theme with the rest of my gear. I just ran out of material, so I couldn't roll exactly what I needed. So copy the planner, don't copy this, but let me talk a little bit about it. You're going to want some mixture of like critical strike chance, crit damage, vulnerable damage, and strength, with the tempers being either damage while berserking, so we will need some of this, at least 2 on our gear, or you want it on one of the two-handed weapons, or just the one two-handed weapon that we have. And then you want to also get barrier generation, because this is going to really help keep us up when we're using Iron Skin. As far as the masterworks go, if you're hitting the crit chance or the vulnerable or the crit damage, that's kind of exactly where you want that to be. You can spread it out a little bit. It's not too crazy if you miss like all 3 on just one thing. And then for the aspect, we've got Berserk Ripping. This is a big part of the build. You absolutely must have Berserk Ripping. This is what's going to give all of our stuff the ability to bleed, like the Tyrael's Might, the Holy Bolts Potion, and the Dust Devil. So absolutely core component to this build. Then moving on to the pants. Now for these, the most important thing that you hit is a greater affix on all resistance. I did not, therefore I am not resistance capped, so in the gameplay you're going to see me taking a lot of damage. That is because I don't have that. So this is one of the really hard parts of the gear to hit, but you absolutely will need that. You can masterwork it like twice and that will solve the issue, but either way it's not easy to do that. Other than that, armor is a very good pick. You could also have this on your boots if you got unlucky. Strength, and then you could have like max life, for example. Other than that, you want to try and hit on your tempers challenging shout cooldown reduction. The reason for shout cooldown reduction above anything else is that we're using the aspect of ferocious winds. This is going to spawn dust devils every time we use a shout. So shout cooldown, very, very, very important. And then barrier generation again. As for your masterworks, resistance to all elements, obviously going to be very, very good. You may need one on armor, but challenging shout cooldown also very, very good for that as well. As for the aspect, we've got Iron Warrior on here. I mentioned this a little bit ago, but this is huge. It is so, so good this season. So definitely a must-have, otherwise you're going to be getting eaten alive as you push into the higher pits. Now, you will have noticed that in my gear, at least, I have all amethysts. I've stacked strength for big damage, you know, big number good, but you can also use rubies if you are finding that you can't survive in the pits that you're trying to farm. Next, we have the boots. And for boots, I've got, again, not necessarily the right things. What I would recommend having is probably strength, movement speed, and war cry. And then for your tempers, definitely not what I've got, because what I've got makes no sense. It's from another build. But you're going to want movement speed and barrier generation again. And for the implicit, I think attacks reduce the cooldown of a fade or triple a fade are going to do you much better than the one that I have. For masterworks, if you can hit movement speed, that's a lot of fun. Warcry is probably the best bet though, honestly. Then as far as the aspect goes, we've got Relentless Berserkers. This is going to help maintain our berserking uptime, which is very important because Berserk Ripping is the primary source of our damage, and it requires that we are indeed in Berserk. After that, we have our two-handed mace, and for this, we are going to be running Strength, Max Life, and Vulnerable Damage. As you can see, I did not roll it again. Please don't judge my gear too much. Everything's so expensive this season, and I'm playing every single class. But you can see I've gone for damage while berserking on the two-hander here. Like I said, you want either 2 rolls of damage while berserking on like a single slot, like a one-handed weapon and your gloves, or you want just one on your two-handed weapon. I know I have two. Again, abide by the planner, not by my character. As far as the tempers go, yeah, you want that, and you want the chance for Dust Devils to cast twice on this weapon. And for your greater affix, if you can hit the strength for the vulnerable, fantastic. Masterworking, you want to try and maybe get the Dust Devils, or you want to try and get the vulnerable damage and the strength. Depends. It was not too important. Again, as long as you get a nice spread on the main stats, then you're going to be looking real pretty with this. As you can also see with all of the weapons, we are using the sapphires to boost our vulnerable damage as well. The stat requirements are the same across all of the weapons. The only difference is that you're going to want critical strike damage on the ones that you didn't get the berserking damage on, which means, yes, you will want to use a rogue in order to optimize this build the best, and you will also want to alternate the Dust Devil tempers that you get. So you can see I've got one for double cast, one for damage, and one for size. Now, the one for size is really important you hit the Masterworks on this one, because this needs to be capped out at 100%. So what you want to do is add the size gain from this Dust Devil to the Dust Devil size gain from your Fierce Winds. I've been saying that wrong this whole video. It's staying in. It's staying in. So Fierce Winds gives you 40% off rip. So there's only a maximum of an additional 60% that you can get before you hit the cap. Now, if you get this max rolled with double masterwork, that should cover that for you. So that's going to be a bit of a pain to hit, but that is the best way to do it. Then as far as the aspects go, we have Conceited. I like Conceited because of the uptime on the Iron Skin. However, a lot of other people are using either Inner Calm or Elements. All of them, I would say, net out to probably more or less the same DPS. I just like Conceited because I can control when the DPS boost is going to come in. And then Dust Devils, of course, this is going to give us another source of Dust Devils along with Fierce Winds. We have a Grandfather, of course, giving us that huge, juicy boost to critical strike damage. As for Masterworks on this one, really the best is all stats in my opinion, but I mean, if you hit anything that isn't ignore durability loss, then I think you'll find. I'm pretty sure they fixed that now. Then we have the Ring of Starless Skies. The reason we have this is because it is an absolutely free 50% damage gain. It is absolutely fucking juiced as far as damage goes for Uber Uniques. And for Masterworking, you want to try and hit that critical hit chance, critical strike damage. Unfortunately, I got a greater affix on core damage, which is just useless, but you know, is what it is. Then for our second ring, we've got a Bold Chieftain's ring here. As you'd expect, we need that shout cooldown. Very, very important for us. And as far as what you want on this ring, vulnerable damage, crit damage, and chance to make enemies vulnerable. You really, really want that here so you don't have to take pressure point in your skill tree, but I am still rolling for it and the game just does not want to give it to me. As far as your greater affixes go, hitting any of them would be great. Same with Masterworking, any of them great. Tempers, Warcry, and critical strike damage from the Rogue. Then as far as our amulet goes, this one, I was so close with this one. So you want crit chance, cooldown reduction, and heavy-handed. Then if you hit the Masterworks on heavy-handed or the crit chance or the cooldown, you're fine. Same with greater affixes. As far as the tempers go, you kind of want to maybe put one into Imposing Presence to give yourself a little bit more leanway with your HP. You can see mine is actually quite low. Or you can opt for any of the other defensives or damage gains if you prefer. You can even go for more cooldown reduction on your shouts. And then we've got crit damage from the Rogue here again as well. As far as the aspect, Devilish, this is huge. This is why we need so much Fury generation. It's because we can spawn 2 Dust Devils every time we generate that 100 Fury, which, to be fair, we will end up doing a bunch. Now, finally, moving on to the Paragon, and I will not spend too much time on this because it would take forever to go through it, but we'll talk about the key components to it. We have Ire. This gives us damage reduction while berserking plus damage while berserking, which is very useful. We've got Might as well, which gives us a big bonus to damage while using a two-handed weapon. This I shouldn't have, so don't worry about it. This is a leftover remnant of the build I was testing before. Then moving over to Blood Rage, we do have the Twister glyph here, which gives us that absolutely fucking huge boost to Dust Devil damage, as well as a flat damage multiplier while Dust Devils are active. Blood Rage as well. Just again, I always like to say this in every video because a lot of people get confused with this one. Even though this is a bleed build and doesn't matter, you don't have to kill bleeding enemies to get the damage bonus. The damage bonus is a global buff. Just doing my part, boys, throwing it out there. Then over to the right here, we have the Hemorrhage board, which is giving us a big, fat, juicy bonus to our damage based on our vulnerable damage bonus. Up into the Warbringer board here, we've got the All Resist. Very, 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 very important to make sure you have these. And then you've got Exploit giving us a source of vulnerable damage and vulnerable, which is great. Then over onto the Bonebreaker board, we've got a nice load of HP up here, which is nice and close to the actual Paragon glyph itself, which is Wrath, crit damage, and Fury. Natural pick, very, very powerful. And then up onto the Decimator board here, we've actually got Decimator. And then also we've got all of the vulnerable damage nodes and damage reduction from vulnerable. I'll take that, thank you very much. And then we've got Marshall in here, which is going to help reduce the cooldown on our ultimate and our Aya skin as we're using Shout. So this is a great, great, great synergy for this build. All in all, very, very happy with this Paragon board. It gives us a lot of power. We're leveraging a lot of really cool multiplicative damage buckets. But I'll refer you to the build planner to get the most up-to-date version of this because mine is a little bit goofy, as you just saw. That is the build. I hope this serves you well. I'm very, very happy to see Whirlwind doing actually pretty good against the other builds here. It's always been one of my favorites. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Again, don't forget to give it a little like and subscribe if you did enjoy it, and I'll catch you on the next one. Love ya. Bye.